Okay, YouTube, we have a problem here. I want to show you what it is. Right here, you can see this fastener. I put a screw in there, but that's only to hold it temporarily. But yeah, as you can see, there's holes here, and we're going to have to deal with that. There's several places on this whole roof like that. And there's other issues. Also, up there, between the barn and this roof. Okay, YouTube. T. Wagner. What we're going to do is I'm going to prepare some stock for a picture frame, and I've already ran this through the planer, the joiner, and now I got to take off the mill marks. Planer blades, they seem to not last too long, and then they develop grooves in them, and that's from hard use. What I'm using today is this is white oak. White oak is extremely hard. Here you get an idea of the end grain and the type of grain that I'm dealing with is pretty wild. So these boards are kind of hard to finish because of this wild grain, you might say, along here. It's kind of hard to see it, but to tame this, you're going to have a belt sander, or you can use a hand sander. I've got a Porter Cable here, belt sander, and this is a really good belt sander. This is the best belt sander I've ever used. I used one of these about 20 or 30 years ago, and so I decided to get one. Here's the type of finish sander that I was talking about. You can use one of these. This is a square one. I prefer the square ones because they can get into the corners. A lot of times I have to get into the corners of a project, and so that's why I got one that's square. I also have a round one. I believe this is 4 or 5 inches. This is a cordless. I got this in a kit with a bunch of other Black & Decker tools, and it works pretty good. But I'm going to be using this belt sander today. This one is 3 by 21. The belt is 3 by 21. You can get 4-inch belts if that's what you want. I find those to be a little bit hard to handle. They're heavy, ungainly. So let's go ahead and sand it. You can see some of the burning on this particular piece because of this wild grain right here in the center especially. And so anyway, now these particular ones, this right here on the top is putty that I put into the cracks, holes, knots, the beginning of cracks, holes, and knots, and that's what I use. This is old, but this is the brand that I use. DAP. I don't believe you can find these anymore. I could not find these at Menards, but maybe I can find them online, I'm not sure. But I like these because this one, particular one, is oak. So I just prefer to have the right color. And of course I'm working on oak. Another issue is red and white oak. This one happens to be sort of in between, so it'll work. But you take your screwdriver. This particular one's an old one that I bought in the 80s, and just take some of this out. Open it first. Another thing I like about this particular kind is you can add lacquer thinner if it gets too hard, and keep mixing it up, and then it'll come out like this. It's nice and soft. I like it. I prefer this kind. You can almost sand it almost immediately, but I prefer to have it dry. So this particular one is dry. For some reason, I like this little screwdriver. I have putty knives. I have got all kinds of stuff, but another thing is you got to put these lids on tight. Hammer them down however you think you should do it. Here's another trick I'll show you. Go to your scrap bin, find a board with a halfway decent straight edge on it, and use that to hammer down your lid. And then what I do with putty, here's the top of it, turn it upside down, because that keeps the moisture in. It may not look like it, but this lid does not fit perfectly tight, and if you leave it up like this, it'll dry out faster. If you put it like this with the lid down, it'll dry out a lot slower, and that's what you want, because you want it to stay moist in here. So let's go ahead and do this one. Alright, always when you're sanding like that, there are always going to be a few extra holes that were not covered by the putty. You're just going to have to bite the bullet, put more putty in there. I always take them, hammer it out a little bit, blow it out if you have an air compressor. I don't have my hose over here right now for my air compressor, so I'm just going to blow it by hand. Then take your putty, since it did not cover all the holes, open it up, take a little bit out, because there's only just a little bit here. Fill your holes. And you might want to leave like a little bit sticking up, because you want it to dry and fully fill the hole. You have to really work it down in there to get it into the hole. I've gone back and done this 2, 3, 4 times. Sometimes. On this particular one, I just did it twice. We'll see how it works. Then take your screwdriver, wipe it off, take it, bang it down, turn it upside down. Turn her upside down. Alright. Now let's see what we got here. Well, here's another one. It's got mill marks on it from the planer. And as I say, the knives, they get wore out pretty quick. I want to show you something else here. This is what happens when your belts are not even wore out, brand new belts, and if you just let them sit around for a year or two, they are just going to come apart. This particular one came from Menards. It came from Menards, but they don't work very well. The best thing to do is to go buy brand new ones and get a better brand. This is the, they're called the in-store brand, and it's the Menards brand. They don't work. Now you notice that I sand a little bit, then I got to turn it around because I've got this great big clamp here. It gets in my way. This is just a frame, so a frame for a picture. So it's not absolutely critical that these edges be perfectly square. I don't know if you can tell that, but this one is not perfect, but it's pretty close. And I check it in several different places to see if it's square. but it's not going to matter that much to me anyway. When you take your belt sander, put it on there, let the weight of the belt sander on there, and then start sanding. Don't press down on it. Sometimes what I do with the belt sander is if I have a place that is especially stubborn, I may press down on one end or the side, or wherever there is a place that is especially stubborn. I don't have that with this stock. This is pretty good stock. This stock is not perfectly straight. If I press down over here on this end sticks up. Press down over here, this end sticks up. So I know it's bowed, and you can tell that by looking down it. It's not perfect. Alright, here's another one. I did some filling. In this one area right here, I use glue. I used Gorilla Glue and sawdust to fill it. That was a particularly deep crack, hole, whatever. So you might keep that in mind. Okay, well, I got sick of the old belts, so I bought two new ones. Just let me turn on a light a minute. Never mind. Here's the two belts that I got. I'll move this other light a little bit. These are called Shopsmith. This one is 60, 80. As you can see, they're 3 by 21. So I'll show you how to change the belt on a Porter cable. For a Porter cable, lift up this lever. There you can see the lever. Take off your belt. Now, this particular belt, it's not too bad. I'm going to put on I think I'll put on a 60. No, I guess I'll put on an 80. So here's the new belt. I didn't like it that much because it's got a crease right there, but it'll work. Now these are called, from this package, you can see they're called bidirectional. Coarse removal, bidirectional, there it is, right over here on this side. That means you can put them on either way. Either this way or this way. Doesn't matter. The reason why they call them bidirectional is because, let me show you something. Well, right there, there's the joint. They used to have joints that were perpendicular to this edge right here. In other words, they would just be 90 degrees. But they figured out that if they put them at an angle like this, they can make them bidirectional. They're all bidirectional now. Now when you turn on your belt sander, turn it like this. Okay? So your belt is not resting on the surface of your bench. This one here is adjusted pretty well, and you want it in between these two rollers as much as possible. You don't want it so it's sticking way out here like this, or way down here and making all kinds of sparks, because this area here is either steel or aluminum, and you don't want it to wear that area too much. So watch your belt so that it's centered on this roller here. And you might look at this one too, this roller also. So it's good to go. You gotta make sure your cord is out of your way, not wrapped around your clamp. Again, turn it around so that you get both ends. I'm going to do both sides. Now, one of the things that I'm going to do here, when you're making a rabbit, you're going to have a rabbit for your glass, because this is going to be a picture frame, all right? Now, if you look at this area right here, it's got some nicks in it, so I'm going to put my rabbit right there. Now the rabbit, I have a pencil here. Oops. My rabbit is going to be right here. All right. It's going to be right there. And you can't hardly see it. Maybe I can draw it in white, I don't know. It's kind of hard to see it, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this portion right here, this area. And you'll see that. Now you can either make a 3 3/8 by 3/8 rabbit, which is fairly typical, but it depends on what you're going to do with the rabbit. What is going to go in the rabbit? Are you going to have a piece of 1/8 inch glass? If so, that's going to take part of your rabbit. right? All right. And then let's say that you, and what I'm going to do is, let's say that your back that I'm going to put on the frame, let's say that that's going to be 1/8 inch plywood. All right. So that's another 1/8. So 1/8 plus 1/8 is 1/4. I'll give a little bit of leeway, so I may just make it 3/8 by 3/8. If you want to go half by half, or if you want to go half by 1/4, or whatever you prefer. It depends on what you are putting in the frame. Is the picture wide? For instance, an oil canvas. All right, that's probably about 3/4 of an inch. Well, you're going to have material that is thick enough. This will never get it. All right, here's some professional material. This is molded especially for picture frames. I don't remember where I got it, but look at this rabbit right here. Look at that. And I'll measure that. Okay, it's about 3/8 that way, and a little bit over 1/4 the other way, this way. So, see what I mean by you're figuring on what you're putting in there. All right, I actually wanted this molding for an oil painting, but the rabbit would have to be modified in order to include that dimension of the oil painting. In fact, I don't know if this would even work. It might be to where your thing that you're covering up, the thing that you're putting in the frame, it might be that it's going to stick out like this, somewhere out in here. So you might want to consider a thicker piece of wood instead of this, which is about 3/4 of an inch. This is 3/4 of an inch thick. This one is about 3/4 of an inch. So that's some considerations on the rabbits, how you're going to plan for that. And sometimes you can take a molding and build it up. All right. Let's say that you wanted to take these two pieces and put them something like this. All right. Here you're creating a rabbit down here, and you're going to glue these two together. But it makes, and then you're going to miter them. It makes, like that other piece I showed you, it makes a little bit more interesting profile if it's got some different dimensions to it. If it's just a plain piece of wood like I'm going to have on this one, that's up to you. Or if you want to build it up like this, or in some other configuration, that is up to you. Maybe you want to run your material through the joiner at an angle, or are you going to take your router bits and profile the edge? You know, that's all up to you. I'm just showing you how to make a simple frame out of this material. I've got another crack, so you have to get out my putty again. See what I mean by you might have to fill the cracks and everything several different times. The putty isn't going to be perfect. It's not a perfect solution to cracks. You can pick out lumber that is totally defect free if that's what you want to do. That isn't what I'm shooting for at this point. It's not what I'm shooting for at this point, so take this, tap it down, and then turn your putty upside down. I'm going to dimension these one at a time, or fill the cracks one at a time so that I don't get them all mixed up. Okay, well, sometimes I take time out to I do maintenance or other things. But I've got my boards dimensioned and also sanded. But anyways, here's what I had to take time out to do. But when I buy a drill bit, a cobalt, I always mark it because a lot of my cobalt bits are mixed in with my regular bits. So here's how I mark it. And you might want to do this. All I did was make a couple of marks in there with my grinder. This is a 9-inch Milwaukee grinder, and I got a 4.5-inch grinding disc and cutoff disc actually. But I got these cutoff discs at Harbor Freight, and I think they're as good as the others I've used. But you can buy whatever you want. Okay, well, let's talk about these. I've got them all sanded. I sanded them to 80 grit with my belt sander on all 4 sides. So, to me, they're ready for finishing. You want to sand them to 120, 400, 500, I don't care. But these are good enough for me. For now. For this particular project. So, I think I'm going to do this one a little bit more because I've got a dark spot there. And I want to get rid of that. But they look pretty good. These would be called S4S, which is finished 4 sides. So yeah, not too bad. And I've already planned out where I'm going to put the rabbits and that I talked about. We'll sand this a little bit more. I always keep my tools within easy reach. Works for me. Well, that dark area, it's not going to come out. It's right there. I guess I'm not going to worry about it.